I want to start this video by saying, Gideon, you are on to something. But for me to be able to explain to you exactly how it started beating us as Kenyans, for us to be able to see the Kenya Premier League where it is right now, I want to start by explaining how football got from where it was, how it got into the commercial side of business, and how eventually all this trickles down to how Kenya and the Kenya Premier League is being managed. And anytime when we're talking about sports, and especially on the African continent and global decisions, always remember we're talking about three major umbrellas: business, politics, and global power. But now let's start to where did sports move from, where did football move from where it is right now to the commercial business that we see today. And this happened in the UK. Now, in 1988 is where the English Football League was formed. At the time, the topest division was Division 1, and it was the one that was bringing in more money. At the time, the English Football League was actually managed by the Federation. This first division team kept saying, hey, we are bringing in more money as the first division team, we are putting in the work, but we are not receiving the money that we're supposed to receive. What is going on? And we know we can see money is coming in. And so the English Football League, of course, being run by the Federation, they were like, we are the ones who own this. It means we own all these rights. And what am I talking about rights? I'm talking about broadcasting rights, commercial rights, sponsorship rights, official merchandising and licensing rights, trademark. We're talking about the IP intellectual rights. We're talking about digital media rights. All of them collectively is equals to billions coming into an entity. And they were like, it is for us to choose how we want to distribute this money. And so the Premier League was making first division was making so much money, but it was being distributed into all other four leagues. And so they were really not making much. So they made the boldest decision that ended up changing everything in football today. In 1991, they came in together as a collective. This is the first division. And they said, listen, what we're going to do is we're going to form a commercial company. And we're going to call it the FA Premier League, which becomes the entity that owns the English Premier League. That company, the ownership is the 20-member team that is in that at the time. And all shares belong to them equally. When that happened, the first major decision that they made was a broadcasting right by Sky Sport, which was worth 304 million. They saw this 20-member team move from ordinary teams to multi-millionaires overnight. And that is when the full shift happened. That is when everybody went, aha. Now, we see this same business concept being applied in South Africa. This is in 1996 and 1997, when the major division of the National Soccer League, which was in South Africa, came in together, 16-member team, formed the PSL, a commercial sports company, and they became running exactly as what was happening in the UK. And so in Africa, what happened in the UK with the EPL is the same concept that happened in South Africa, to prove that this is a commercial plan that actually works. Now, let's talk about Kenya. Kenya had the same idea when I believe in 2007, when the Kenya Premier League was formed. Now, they came in with the exact same concept of where our 16-member team will be the owners of the Kenya Premier League. But they made a mistake. They brought in the federation at the time, and the federation was given the highest shares of the Kenya Premier League, and the 16-member teams distributing the remainder of the shares. When that happened during that time, whoever was president at the time in 2007. Now, the KPL, the Kenya Premier League Limited, came in and brought in SuperSport. And this came in with a $5.5 million commercial broadcast right deal. This money was to be in a period of 5 years. This was the time when we could see KPL everywhere on SuperSport. I think we had quite a number of channels, I think 4 channels on SuperSport, where we were able to watch all these games. So if you were not going to the stadiums, you were able to watch them on TV. That was the time that happened. Now, where did it start beating us? Now, you remember when I said that the federation had the majority shareholding when it comes to the Kenya Premier League. So remember that whoever owns you or whoever has the majority shareholders, at some point, remember that federations are not set in stone, that the current president will be the current president for the next 20 years. This is where every president during elections, you keep switching management. And therefore, when it came to around 2020, the person who was the president at the time came in with a little bit of ego. And when he realized that it is the federation that actually owns a majority shareholding of the Premier League and not the 16 team, he decided to make some decisions. Terrible ones, but these were decisions that he made. One of the decisions he made, na kichwa ngumu, was that he wanted the 16-member team to be made into 18-member team. At that time, the 16-member team said no. And on top of that, the decisions that we had made, I don't know if it was a gentleman's decision or it was in their contract, but at the time, it was supposed to be the 16-member team that had the loudest voice, despite the federation having major shareholdings. So what happened? These two people clashed terribly. And this was the clash that happened in 2016. Now, what happened? So they went into the Sports Dispute Tribunal to determine who had more power over the other. Now, as per how you are registered, the federation has more power and the rest of the 16 are quite under. And therefore, the Sports Dispute Tribunal decided to go with, listen, as per what we are seeing, it's the federation that has more power. With that decision that was actually made in 2020, if I'm not wrong, then came the SuperSport, and SuperSport said, hey, we signed a deal with KPL. Now, this decision of where that has been made by the Sports Tribunal, that the federation is the one that is the owner of the FKF, that is not what we had planned. So for us, what we're going to do legally, we have a right to pull our sponsorship from this. And that is how we lost our $5.5 million broadcasting deal. And that is where we stopped seeing most or all our games in SuperSport. Now, because of that, remember, the person who came into power at the time, he caused a lot of havoc. Part of it was conflict priorities, political interference. None of them had commercial expertise at all. Remember, just because you own a team does not mean you're the one who's managing the team. You just own a team. So when you elect someone into power because he owns a team, and he promised you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this guy has never done sports business in his life, he has a team that does that, y'all are screwed. Governance conflicts and major instability. This first ended up seeing Kenya Premier League not even having any broadcasting rights at all for almost 2 years. Why? And then on top, because of that, the ripple effect is commercial. Of course, the entities that support these teams were like, we're not being seen, therefore we're not giving you money. That is where sponsorship was pulled out. This is where we were seeing teams saying, hey, our sponsors have pulled out, we can't pay our players, we can't do this, we can't do this, we can't do this. Why? Because they made the mistake of putting in the federation, which was not supposed to be part of this Premier League, just an oversight committee like everybody else, into part of the Premier League. So when that came in, people with power trips ended up screwing over our league. And that is what we see today. Teams barely making it, a Premier League that is barely visible. So even when they were doing the contract deal with Azam, any person who has studied sports business, even to the slightest fraction, would have seen that deal as a terrible one from the get-go. But of course, the people in power do not know this. They see a figure, they think, oh my God, they sign it without realizing that this was a terrible deal. So I hope that you're able to understand where it started, what happened, and how we reached here. And maybe from that, we are able to change the direction of our football now that we have a broader understanding. With that, I'm going to say thank you so much for tuning in and see you next time.